Hello, Narnach here. Welcome back to Grim Dawn. We're playing in the Ashes of Malmouth expansion with a Necromancer, who has amassed quite an army of undead. So far, we're playing through pretty quickly. We find ourselves inside of the Darkvale gate. So the objective is, of course, going to be to go through here, say hello to Karos, Sigil of Catan, leave a bit of a lasting impression there, and then see if we can make our way through the snow. I think this was a broken bridge at some point, but might be confusing it with another bit. So the last 5 or 6 episodes, I recorded them basically all just in one big batch. And of course, because I had so many episodes pre-recorded, I had some time to look at other things. And I have been playing a little bit more seriously with some of the sibling builds, you could call them. Different builds that use the Necromancer. No, if you remember back to the first episodes, I was in doubt a little bit between whether I would go with a occultist or with a shaman, and eventually I did make the argument for the shaman based on the skill points or on some of the usefulness of devouring swarm for stripping the vitality resistance of our foes, as well as the Briarthorn being a pretty decent tanky pet. And Mog Drogon's Pact being really nice for just keeping our swarm of minions alive. Hello. And of course, when I got to them, which is very convenient, and also we need a spot for it. So I'll just replace Blood Drinker since I don't really use it. I find it a little bit awkward. If I were a Wendigo totem, there would I hide. Okay. So let's see, Wendigo totem, we put it down and it pulses twice per second to do a decent heal. Currently it heals for 2% of my max life plus another 30%, and it does that for I think everything in range, including my my minions. But later on we can upgrade it so it will also deal with vitality damage, because of course vitality damage is the theme of this build. But no, those things kind of sealed the deal for me when it came to picking the secondary. But there's always this thing like, yeah, but what if I had gone for the occultist as my secondary? The occultist has a very nice skill called Bloody Pox, which inflicts enemies with vitality damage, bleeding damage, and it hits them with an effect that reduces their health. Their current health by a certain percentage. So if it hits them early on, it's gonna do more damage than later on, because their current health is gonna be lower. But it is a very nice way to just burn through large groups of enemies, especially because it spreads from one enemy to the next. It is like Ill Omen in that regard. So of course, if you have Ill Omen on the one hand and you have Bloody Pox on the other hand, you can combine them to first make all the enemies sick, so they take damage over time, and every time it spreads, the enemies just tick down for their current health, and then you inflict them with Ill Omen, so they start running away. So then you have someone who's diseased and very contagious, and you make them run back into the back lines, infecting their bodies. And I think I need to be there, so I kind of walked the long way around. Never mind, gives me more opportunity to talk. So Ill Omen and Bloody Pox is kind of a nice combination. And if you combine that with an army of skeletons to keep the enemy occupied and just know as a screen in front of you, so nothing ever actually touches you. And then from the back lines you can simply Bloody Pox them and Ill Omen them if they become too annoying. And you have a combination that works rather well. And one of the upgrades for Bloody Pox is Fevered Rage. And Fevered Rage gives another around 20 or so % increase to the current health reduction. So it's the first time it hits, the enemy loses like a quarter of their health or even more. So it is pretty darn potent. In exchange for this wonderful effect, enemies get their speed increased by 150%, so they're 2.5 times as fast as they normally would be. So they move faster, they attack faster, and on top of that, I believe their offensive ability is increased, so their hit chance and crit chance goes up, but well, to compensate, their defensive ability goes down by, I think, both 40% or something. So it's quite a... They become easier to hit, but in turn they hit you. So you effectively turn them into berserkers that just take quite a hit to their health. This is very nice for tearing through groups of mobs. There's one problem with this. The current health reduction is something that hero resistances are pretty strong against. Even a tier 1 hero resistance will lower the effectiveness of this ability or stats or whatever you want to call it by, I think, 85 or so percent. And the tier 6 out of 6 will even reduce the effect by 98%. So no, bosses, ex-bosses like Warden Krieg and the Logorian, they all have tier 6 hero resistance. So it's only going to be 2% as effective as it ought to be. Meaning you don't really do a lot of damage with it, but in turn they become 2.5 times as fast as normal and they more or less always hit you. So it is really fun fighting bosses that way. It really becomes frantic. Bosses shoot your skeletons like they're made out of paper rather than bone. And after that you get a pretty good cardio exercise, I'll tell you that. But no, if you don't pick up the Fever Rage, then by itself it is pretty nice, and the penalties to offensive ability that you inflict on enemies via the upgrades are pretty darn nice. So I've actually played that build all the way through to around this point where we are now. Actually, I think I might have actually defeated the Gate Watcher at the village of Karos and grabbed the Darkville Gateway point. And that was a very enjoyable experience. It's a much more aggressive version of this build. Because of the bloody pox, you as a character are always really just pushing and being aggressive and running after enemies. You got Ill Omen as a way to just combine bloody pox to just scare enemies away. And that works pretty damn well. And I'll probably record a video, just a bonus episode, so to say, of running around in this general area for the duration of a regular episode, just to show you the gameplay of that. And let's see, another build variation I've played, that I've been playing in multiplayer with a friend of mine. That is the Reaper. I think I mentioned it before. Might have even been the last episode where I talked about it. I'll see about maybe recording some gameplay of that as well. That's a lower level character. I think I've just got him to 24. And there, you're just running around like a madman. And backstabbing things and going after them. And it is quite a bit of fun as well. Completely different playstyle, but a lot of fun nonetheless. And we now find ourselves at Karos, Sigil of Cthulhu. First stage is in the human stage. And then things really get real. Self. Don't forget to put the Wendigo totem down. It is part of the build now. And it is a very nice way to keep the minions alive. Well, keep them mostly alive, that is. Let's see, I think there was a treasure room down here, exactly. With a Ornate Strong box. And some crafting stuffs. Wonderful. Okay, a bunch of lore, might as well sort that. Okay. Oh, another nice thing that I completely glossed over it, and it wasn't until someone mentioned it in the comments that I was remembering it. And that is that things like these seals of binding, blood of Catan, basically all the purple crafting ingredients, even dynamite, you can now put it in the shared stash rather than needing to put it in the keep it in your inventory. It used to be that all the purple stuff had to remain in your inventory. Now it's only the explicit quest items that have to stay in your inventory, but all the advanced crafter components, you can put them in your shared stash and they should be able to be used by all your characters. So if you have a higher level character, no, just basically just empty out a full bag, because most of the time it's all stacked up to become one big bag. And now you get that space back and you get to pull all the resources from all your characters that way. At the expense of one shared stash tab that just gets even more stuff. But no, it is nice because it does make it more easy for new characters to just start crafting, so you don't really need to wait with crafting like that first relic until you have a tainted brain matter or something. You can just use one you found on an older character. So now if you hadn't thought of doing that, or if you, like me, just forgot of doing it, it is useful. Let's see. I think, yeah, we need to be downstairs, not upstairs. So I haven't just played with the Reaper. I really do miss my Shadow Strike, because now I was at the top and I did see the mage down there, and with Shadow Strike you could have just right clicked or just used Shadow Strike on whatever button it was to just instantly or nearly instantly just teleport over there. And it's such a nice feeling when you can skip the walking to enemy step and you're just instantly in combat. Also, I really should keep remembering to put the Wendigo totem down.
That skill's not ready.
Okay, you look angry. There's definitely something angry about you. I guess at this point, that's the one downside of the build. With all there's just so many skills on the skill bar, there's a lot of things that you could be doing. So, I think at some point I'll probably have to just reevaluate each and every single skill that we have on the bar. Just to see, okay, we've had it on the bar for a while now. Is it going to add anything, or will we lose something if we remove it? That's maybe a better approach. Just assume every single skill on your skill bar is gonna go away. Is there something that you will truly miss if it were to go away? It's a trick that I always use with when trying to sell loot to vendors. Works especially well in Path of Exile, where you can move all of your items over to the merchant inventory, and then all you have to do is just hit the accept trade to sell it. But no, to physically just move it out of your own inventory into the merchant's inventory, to just signal it to yourself, like, okay, this is no longer my own item. This is now something I have already sold. All I have to do is confirm the transaction, and then it's like, okay, do I want to keep this? Do I want to buy it back from the merchant, so to say? Because that's often, if there's an item that's so, and you're like, yeah, I might end up using it, or I can see a theoretical situation in which it could be useful, maybe for another character, then your default is yes, and then you have to convince yourself of no. Whereas if you reverse it, then the default is no, I'm gonna sell it, and then you have to have a good argument for keeping it instead. And it's a lot easier way to keep your inventory cleaned up, to keep your stash empty of useless items. Though in Grim Dawn there's quite a lot of epic items that grant bonuses to skills and things like that. often for classes I haven't even played with yet, or I don't have current builds for. So it's a little more difficult to make that assessment that strictly for each and every single item. And especially epics, so I kind of default to I just want to keep one copy of each epic item in my stash. And if I find a duplicate, then for one-handers that you could be dual wielding, then I allow for 2 of them. But 2 body armors, I'll just keep the best one and then I'll throw away or disassemble the one that is not as good. And even then, you often find yourself running out of inventory space. But no, you can apply the same philosophy to skills as well. And especially in a first playthrough of a class, you don't really know it yet, especially because it's newly added to the game. You just want to put everything in, just see, okay, is this really, really helping me, or is it not as great? Especially the skills that only have a single point of investment. Do you see yourself putting more points into them, make them more useful, or are they already just incredibly useful at just a single point investment? For example, in this build, the Ill Omen, I don't find myself using it incredibly frequent. I use it because we don't really have a good reason for it, because there's enough minions doing the tanking, for example. So Ill Omen, often the enemy that gets targeted by Ill Omen, it already dies before we could even scare things away. Doesn't really work on larger foes or on bosses. So now the enemies that you might want to just scare away a little bit to just give yourself a little bit of time to recover, they're not going to be affected by it. So then it's more, okay, if you're playing a Necromancer that, let's say, doesn't have a group of minions with it. Now, if you're playing like the Nightblade variation, the Reaper, if you're playing a melee version, or if you're playing a pure spellcaster. In that case, Ill Omen might be very useful for getting the overly scary enemies away from you. On the other hand, you could be using it offensively by scaring away a wave of enemies. If you do manage to hit it off, then enemies are running away and they're just being shot in the back by the crossbow dudes. But then again, it also depends on the mix of skeletons that you have. But shooting it on the second line of minions does help a little bit. Let's see. Yep. Now next up we have Call of the Grave. It's a damage bonus for minions. It's a heal for minions. It's actually pretty nice. Not really putting a lot of points into it yet because I just have such a wide and varied investment in skills. No, just putting a single point into most things and then later on putting some. It's because I don't think we really have all that much in it yet. No, it's only 2 points. But that skill, no, it's just a single click and then your minions get more sustain, so hopefully they'll survive the fight a bit better. It is a thing that is worth more points. But then of course now if you have something like a Wendigo Totem, then the trade-off becomes, do you put points into Wendigo Totem or in Call of the Grave? Because now the Wendigo Totem, it's a fixed heal in a large AoE that also affects yourself rather than only your minions, whereas Call of the Grave is only for the minions and not for you. Let's see, next up we have the Devouring Swarm. So initially I thought it would be dealing a decent amount of damage and leeching some life to me. Oh, it has fatality damage, so that is something that of course I have a pretty strong synergy with. Bleeding I don't do anything with. And it strips enemies' resistance, especially against vitality, and to a lesser degree also for bleeding. So follow-up attacks or other attacks with the same element are gonna do a lot more damage. The thing is, the life leech component of it is not all that strong. I didn't find it strong enough at least to help me tank through some things. So well, eventually I actually took some points out of it in order to boost the minions, because just having a very strong screen of minions in the end provided a better defense for me. And so currently I've got the Devouring Swarm pegged as a skill that we're gonna put points into, maybe not even until Elite, because most of the bosses on normal are not all that tough, so you don't really need to strip the resists. And no, on Elite and especially Ultimate, monsters gain so much more health that if you strip away their resists and even turn the resistances into negatives, then that is gonna help you deal a lot more damage, especially against enemies that are naturally resistant to vitality damage. That's just you're gonna ignore it. So it is a skill that is gonna be worth it to remain on the skill bar. Next up we got Siphon Souls. It's only a single point investment and one in its bonus. But already dealing 1000 damage and then leeching a quarter of that, and we are reducing enemies' health regeneration. And there's not a lot of enemies that have strong health regeneration. The blood mages come to mind. The blood mages in the cave in the Smuggler's Pass there's some blood mages there. And there are sometimes regenerator heroes. Those definitely are useful to reduce their regeneration, so make it easier to just chew through their life. Oh. Okay, this is getting a little intense. Fun detail though. All of our skeletons are still alive. The tanky pets did their job. They definitely tanked a boatload of health there. But this was intense. I did have to drink actually a health flask, which I don't have to do all that often. But no, Siphon Souls, 1000 damage, you steal a quarter as life, so that's 250 per enemy hit. Then of course enemies have some resist to varying degrees, so you're not always going to do the 250 health, but especially if enemies have been warmed up a little bit, or if you manage to get a Devouring Swarm or something off to strip their resists, then you might even be doing more damage than that. But if you're now surrounded by like 4 enemies and you hit them for the listed damage, that's going to be 1000 health that you just slurp out of them. So no, there is a value to it, and we check. Yeah, the range actually increases the more points you put into it. So, and of course the damage goes up, and the health regen suppression as well. So it's a skill I don't find myself using all that often, but that is because this early on we can just kill everything by virtue of just blasting through it as if we were a glass cannon. But I do know that once the enemies become sturdier, they stay alive longer, and it becomes more difficult to overpower them. And at that point I need something to stay alive. And something like a Siphon Souls will help with that. So no, it's definitely not a totally useless skill from that perspective. Let's actually spend the devotion while the minions do the fighting. We were completing the Raven constellation over here. So that gets us to 6 out of 10 green points that we need here. So next up, was that the bats? That was the bats. Yeah, because that's gonna get us 3 green, that's gonna get us 1 red. No, wait, it wasn't the bat. It was the Bismael's Bonds. That was it. But we need something red for that, and that's what the bat was for. Yeah, so it's Raven, Bat, Bismael, or was this the point where we... Oh no, all we need is 1 point. Yeah, so this is where we will actually respec back into the red starter node, so we can start on Bismael's Bonds. So we can grab some extra green from this. You know what, I'm actually slightly confusing myself. Might be that it was Bat first, Bismael's second. Either way, we had to have both of them. And I don't have my cheat sheet open next to me. So, you know what, we'll keep that one closed for now. And I'll just spend the point next time. Well, we did just complete it, so next time we will know. As always, there's a in the description of each video I have a mini strategy guide, which includes a list of all the devotions in turn, which also includes when to spec out of some points and back into points. Because by juggling the points, you can get yourself into some things faster than into some other ones. Okay. Wonderful. We chased him down. Good. So let's continue this impromptu skill evaluation. Mark of Torment. That's currently at level 2. 1 plus 2 all. 13 second recharge, 3.5 second duration. Absorbs 31% of all damage and reflects 171% of the absorbed damage back at enemies. Right now, I'm not overly impressed. It might be useful as like a panic button in some boss fights with bosses that do incredible amounts of very strongly telegraphed smash attacks. But no, the 13 second cooldown in our current case and 3.5 second duration means it's not going to be all that useful. At 10 points, I believe the duration is around 5 seconds, cooldown maybe around 10. Because it does flip. Oh no, the recharge remains, it's the duration that goes up. So then you can get it up maybe 5 seconds out of 13 and the absorption goes up a little bit more as well. So you just mitigate a little bit of the incoming damage. But of course you can always make the argument, well, if you want a skill to prevent very strong incoming damage, then no, sidestep it. Physically sidestep it. Don't be where the damage is, because then you have 100% damage avoidance. And no damage reflection. No, just like the bosses, the purple bosses where you need it most, have hero armor. That hero armor also reduces the damage reflection that it takes. So, no, you're not gonna absorb like half of the damage that the Logorian deals to you, or Lucius, or whatever, and then reflect it back at 200% effectiveness. No, because they are gonna reduce the reflection damage by like 75 to 90% or so. So it's not gonna matter. So I'm actually thinking of just taking it out. It's just one less button that's going to be on the bar, so that's just going to be one less distraction. That's one less button I will feel slightly compelled to push anyway. Also, let's actually leave a portal here and then walk over to the waypoint. Because then we can just go back here for the next quest. Okay, let's continue our impromptu skill evaluation. Wendigo Totem, that is the next, which reminds me, put down Wendigo Totem. Oh, Wendigo Totem with single point invested, it helps a little bit. Oh, it's 2% healed, that's per half second of course, but that's now gonna take like 25 seconds to heal you from 1 hit point to full health. Though the 30 fixed health is going to help a little bit with that as well. But still, though 30 health compared to what I have, it's like 0.5%. Yeah, I think it's around 0.5%. Just maybe 0.6%. It helps a little bit. But no, the more points you put in, the more health you're gonna get out of it. And at higher levels, I think it goes up to like 5 or so% with 300 health. And at that point, no, that's 10% health plus another 600 per second that you get. 600 health regen per second is pretty darn potent. All you have to do is keep the Venica totem alive, but I think that ought to be achievable. And if you then combine it with the Call of the Grave, then you should actually have a very, very sturdy army of enemies. Okay, I think we liberated this waypoint here. It was a little messy, very, very colorful. And then lastly, we of course have our pets. We have raised skeletons. Well, skeletons are awesome. Then we have the Blight Fiend, which is just a very nice minion that just does its thing and distracts enemies. And similarly, the Briar Thorn, it's just there to distract enemies and have a little bit of pierce retaliation. And all in all, they're just big bodies that absorb enemy attacks, so I don't have to. Or the skeletons in that regard. And they're not really meant as a damage source. That's what we got the skeletons for. Hello there.
Why do you have such a... Let's see. I've already informed...
Okay, so we got a Goliath Signet. I think you get a random epic here. In this case, it's all physical and internal stuff, so not really gonna be our cup of tea. Oh, no, Inquisitor.
With the cultist.
I'll see you in Fort Ikon. And you know what the nice thing is? We already reached Fort Ikon, so we can just hop into the portal here. And then we can head over there. And then we can say hello to him again. And then from this point onward, Fort Ikon is going to be the frontier town where we do our shipping, or our selling, where we have access to a stash there. There's even a blacksmith. I forgot, what bonuses do you convey? Ah, this is the same as in Homestead. Ether resist, chaos resist, or health that you get on randomly crafted rare items.
Good, you've arrived. Betrayal, precisely.
Okay, and then we get the quest to go after Commander Lucius, and here we get an add-on for that, well, same area to find the supplies, and then 2 vendors, Quartermaster and a Black Legion.
See anything you like?
Does the Black Legion have? Ooh, they have a new relic as well, Fortitude. This is probably going to be unique to the Ashes of Malmouth expansion as well. Because I think just about every vendor got one thing as a bonus. Shield Bash.
Put it to good use.
Okay. Now that we are here, might as well take a little bit of opportunity to just... So all the purple stuff, including dynamite, you can just put it in. Always just tie these up rather nicely, but while playing it does make your inventory quite messy. Oh. Some shards, and then we have some items to filter through. Let's see. I got a request from someone, which is something that people have asked in the past to just show some crafting and no loot filtering, things like that, because that's something that a lot of Let's Plays leave out. I personally think that the reason that it's often left out is because sorting through the items, doing crafting, it's if you compare it to the regular gameplay, there's not a lot of excitement in it. It's in fact, no, you might spend 5 or 10 minutes just going through the motions, filtering through your gear, trying to have a look at, no, could this be an improvement? No, just considering different ways to maybe shuffle your components around, and then in the end either you decide like, no, it's not going to be an upgrade, and then you just sell items anyway, or you do have it and then it's just going to be a big puzzle shuffle by just shuffling all your items around until you have your resistances rebalanced. But so it is a useful thing to do, show every once in a while. So that's something to have a look at soonish. For now though, we stashed everything away. Well, we're not gonna use a gun. One of the problems is that there's just too many damn items in the game. I try to have a bit of a sorting order here, so I have all my crafting stuff in here, then all the items, all the blue items until level 30 in here, then the level 40 plus items in here, and then the level 50 plus items in here. And then once I got enough money, I can even buy another one for, like say, level 70 plus or 60 plus or whatever some arbitrary threshold's gonna be. And I don't think it's ever gonna be enough, because these pages are already overflowing. So I have been just using this stash for a little bit of a overflow space. Bonus to Ravenous Earth. Hey, Edric's Back Scratcher, that's an old one that now has a bonus. Oh, also something useful to keep in mind. Legacy items have gotten the bonus to skill that is intrinsic to them. So if you used to have a legacy Edric's Back Scratcher, the +2 to Ravenous Earth, which is a Necromancer skill, it got added on top of it, whether you found it before or after the expansion, doesn't really matter. So that is something to keep in mind. +2 to Storm Surge and Brute Force, that sounds very shaman to me. Physical lightning damage, so that's completely the wrong element. Eye of the Beholder, I don't think this was a very useful item for us, but the look is pretty nice since we do have the look applied. And the Glyph Signet, yeah, that's not a match. So no, none of the blues are an upgrade. Chances are that for the greens it's gonna be a similar thing, so we don't use two-handers or ranged weapons. Here we have a book. Bonus to acid and poison damage, so that is the wrong kind of element. Bonus to Briarthorn, Ground Slam, that's also Briarthorn. Ring of Steel, that is Nightblade. And then a damage modifier to Briarthorn. If we were very heavy on the Briarthorn, maybe even using it as our only or at least a primary pet, this might have been useful. Not +2 to the summon, that's more bonus damage, that's more base damage, I mean more health. And the Ground Slam, it's AoE attack. AoE attack that does some stunning and things like that. So it could be useful, but for us it's not, and our current one has +1 to Necromancer, and that is very, very valuable. Let's see. Well, most weapons are going to be rubbish because the Warden's Judgment gives us 2 to raise skeletons and 1 to bonus skeletons, which is the entire focus of the build, so it is going to be incredibly difficult to replace it. But it is worth having a look, because there might be something in there that is actually going to be compelling enough to switch out. This one is 3 levels above us, and Elemental Resist is nice, but it's only 7% more than what we currently have, and we will be losing out on 4 skill points and a bonus to pets. So that goes. And for the shoulders, bonus to vitality damage. Yes, we do have that. Elemental resists. That is something that, well, our resists are in a pretty decent shape. So it's going to be nice, but it's not going to be incredible. And there's no bonus to health on here, and the bonus to pets. Again, we have very nice shoulders that really boost our pets, especially the elemental resist. It does make them sturdier, and it is something not to keep an eye out for, to keep boosting the pets. So that's not gonna be it. Oh, this is a caster armor. Actually, no, it looks like a caster armor, but it is not. Ether resistance is the only actual useful thing on here, so no contest. Let's see, two-handers we don't use, guns we don't use. Stormbox of Algoloth, that is Inquisitor, and this is all the wrong elements. Elemental damage, chance to disrupt enemies, that is kind of cool. especially in this build, because now if the enemy is disrupted, they can't use their skills against us. But again, the argument is still Warden's Judgment kind of trumps everything. And in here, there's a little bit of vitality damage on here. That's kind of the only redeeming grace. For the rest, there's nothing in here that is useful. Mighty Kaiman's Badge of Fortitude. That's fire and lightning damage from the Kaiman's Badge. Bonus to Grenado, that is Demolitionist, yes, something with a D. So not really all that great. And again, wrong elements. And a bit of fatality damage, that's the only really, well, a little bit of vitality resist, a little bit of total speed, but it's kind of, meh, we're not using the poison, so the increased duration is going to be rubbish. And currently we get 3 bonus seconds to Call of the Grave, which is pretty cool on our current one. So that sorts through all the items we found so far.
See you around.
There you have it. Oh, need to actually read the lore still. Gonna skip the lore even for the one of my most favorite lore bits in the game, which was of course the where are they? The trip south, parts 1, 2, and 3. You find them in the in snowy areas where we just went through. If you're new to the game, playing through, go out of your way to find the trip south parts 1, 2, and 3 and read it, because it is, I think, it's probably one of the best bits of lore in the game. Just so well done, so atmospheric. Oh, and there's an illusionist over here. So if we want to update our look, we can do it here. We did gain a level as well in reading all the lore and stuff. So where are we gonna spend our points? What is currently the biggest issue we have? Because the last thing we did was go for the Wendigo Totem. I think it's probably going to be useful to just keep putting some points into the Wendigo Totem, so the heal becomes better. So it is going to be a little more useful. It also has life tap, so in the area where it heals us, it's also going to do damage to enemies. So by putting points into it, it scales, and that does increase the damage. So as an experiment, let's clear Ill Omen. For now, let's pretend it doesn't exist. So we get Call of the Grave. That's going to be something we want to use a lot. We want to keep our minions boosted as much as possible. But it is on a pretty hefty cooldown, so maybe we actually do keep it on the second one. And we just put the Wendigo Totem in. So we open up a fight. Wendigo Totem is going to be button 1. Now we have button 2 for Call of the Grave. That's going to boost our minions. Mark of Torment, as I said, I don't think I was all that impressed with it. So if we just take that one out, like that. If we get surrounded, we can use it to deal damage and drain life. And Devouring Swarm, kind of a combat bonus. And let's put it slightly further out, just spaced out a little bit. And let's see if, for the next episode or 2, if this set of skills is gonna be useful, and if so, we can refund a couple points out of the other ones. Oh, of course we have our second skill bar here. With the Y on the keyboard, you can switch between them. Yeah, see? You can switch between them. The second bar is very nice for buffs. So we have the Spectral Binding, which also has an upgrade. Spectral Binding, the base skill, it gives us more melee damage, some ether damage, that's for melee. Global bonus to all ether damage that we do. It gives us a bonus to health and some offensive ability. Health is always nice. It is one of the, especially if you combine it with the Heart of the Wild from the Shaman. I think this one, it just gives you 80 health per point, so it's going to be about 1,000 points in the end. This one, in the end, is going to get you 30% more health. So the 1,000 actually becomes 1,300 if you max them both. So that makes you quite a bit more tanky than you would be. So I guess there's definitely going to be value in having this increased, but this early on we already have over 5,000 health, which is a boatload for this early in the game. So I think we can get away with just keeping it low for now and then boosting it later, but by itself it is useful. Got 1 point into Spectral Wrath. To be honest, I haven't really noticed much of it, but I haven't really put many points into it either. It's AoE, does vitality and ether damage. We boost both damage types rather heavily, so that's just passive scaling there. And it reduces enemies' attack speed, vitality resist and ether resist. So it should, in theory at least, scale with the vitality reduction that is on the Devouring Swarm. Thing is, of course, we don't need to get hit by enemies to trigger this rather than being proactive about it. Nice thing is that you don't need to be proactive about it, so in situations where you get hit, it will apply automatically. So it's just a free damage bonus. So for 1 point I think this is alright, and especially because it doesn't take up any icons, it's just no fire and forget. And later on we might actually end up maxing it just to max out the resistance penalties to enemies, but as I said, not entirely convinced of it yet. But it might be much stronger than I give it credit for. So we Mock Dragon's Pact, it's health regen, it's health, it's a bonus to physical damage, which also applies to all of the pets that are nearby, which is quite a bonus. It's currently 22 to 32. If we compare that to the base damage on our skeletons, that's about 1/6 bonus damage, 13% extra. That is not bad for a skill that only has 4 points in it. Mastery of Death, that's across the board. It's both for me and the pets, bonus to damage, offensive ability, defensive ability and some vitality rest. And for the minions, convert some physical to vitality damage, so they gain a bonus from the pet vitality damage scaling, which is going through the roof. Lastly, Ether Ward. That is something, I made a small change to the gear lineup between episodes. I used to have a Hollowed Fang in my offhand, and then I look at my resist and noticed that the ether resistances were pretty low actually. They were at 39. So putting a Purified Salt into your offhand or your main hand allows you to cast an aura that gives you 20 ether resist to you and your pets. So now this is now closer to 50%, so the resistances are a little bit more balanced. The Hollowed Fang, the physical to vitality damage conversion, allows us to scale the damage a little bit better, and of course the bonus to vitality damage and leech and stuff. It is useful, but at this point the resistances, we actually have the quest now to go after Commander Lucius. That guy deals a boatload of ether resistances, so Purified Salt is a very nice and easy way of getting it, and it also applies to the pets. So the pets will be slightly more sturdy in that fight, and that has a lot of value. But with that, I realized I've been talking for way too long. So I'm gonna thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye bye.